What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ICNVDE Drives Edition. This video is definitely going to be informative, and I'm going to address several things I've talked about in the past videos, which I know I got a lot of new subscribers, and many of them not going to go back and do the research. So let's talk about it all. And I'm going to show you, well, I'm even going to tell you why I'm right.
Then you learn how to beat them. If you take off the cast, you can see all the healing. If the pain's in the past, move on from the grave and put your foot on the gas. No, never stop competing, yeah. I've been doing this, I'm on it. I just wanna be iconic. Sipping on a gin and tonic, got me going off when I'm on this topic, yeah. If I ever play, I want it. You know that I'm always honest. Stay away from those who are toxic. Keep them out your face, no way, you don't want it, yeah.
I've really bit my tongue for a long time now. And for those of you that have been following me, I had some subscribers tell me that they weren't going to mess with me anymore because my videos are speaking hypocrisy and other things of that nature and so forth. They said they were going to stop following me and left me alone. And then now I see they have returned, and I'm not going to say any names because, like I told you, when they told me they were going to leave, I'm only stating the truth, and that's all I ever wanted to say to any of my subscribers and my ICNVDE Drive Edition community is I want you to be informed so you can make the best educated decision that works for you. There is so much I could cover in this video, and I actually had shot a video to release on Monday, November 14th. I shot it on Saturday when I had some downtime, and I'm going to be honest with you. Because of Rick Conti's video that he dropped, I literally felt like I need to go back and change that video. I'm probably not going to release that video. I may even do some inserts from that video into this video. But ultimately, most of the information in that video I'm going to cover in this one. But I changed it because Rick Conti's video actually gave me more validation, and it also made me want to address some other videos I've made. So before we get too deep into this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNVDE Drive Edition community. We do have a lot of conversations on here, and most of it is to address the questions that I get asked in my email, social media, and in person. So if you have something you want me to talk about or give you my opinion on it, please reach out. I have no problem with that. I know we like to hear different perspectives, and sometimes we all have different connections, and we cover information based off those connections. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to comment. Now, moving forward from that, but a couple YouTubers actually said I do nothing but readdress information that they put out. And I kind of had to laugh at this because the truth of the matter is, for those who don't know my history, I sold cars. I got out of the car sales business mainly because it takes a large strain on your life. And what I mean by it takes a large strain on your life, most car salesmen work a minimum of 60 hours, some more. And not only do you work a minimum of 60 hours, Saturday is a mandatory commitment day. So while most people are enjoying their Saturdays, making memories with their family and so forth, I was actually missing a lot of family time. Now, the funny thing about this is I left car sales only to go into another job that was just as demanding. So one thing I learned about myself is I always pick jobs that have high purpose and high demand, or that allow me to interact with a lot of people. That's the honesty of it. Now, I was very good at car sales. I won't say I was great because, trust me, I still had levels to go. But because of my personality, I made a lot of friends along the way. And some of my friends have advanced in their careers since I left car sales. I know several guys I sold cars with that now work in finance. So they help me out with a lot of my finance questions. I know several guys that worked in car sales with that were car salesmen that are now managers at stores. And I also knew general managers that tried to talk me out of leaving the car sales business that often gave me the time or the opportunity to come in my free time and sell a car to anybody I knew or I met and brought into the dealership and gave me a commission on the side. So I've had a lot of experience in car sales. I don't know how many people have those opportunities, but this is what was given to me. So I'm sharing that with you so you can kind of get an understanding and backstory of my history and how I have a lot of knowledge in this game. Now, when we have this conversation today, or when I have conversations about the C8 Z06, I still had, and I say that I still have a close friend that was once a GM of a Chevy store. And that's my key trigger. Was a GM of a Chevy store, but now is a GM of a Buick GMC Cadillac store. I actually reached out to him about getting a Hummer EV because I actually have interest in a Hummer EV. But, and no disrespect or complaints, because I understand this is a business. So I didn't expect any special consideration for the car. When I finally reached out to him for the car, I wasn't one of the first 20 people to reach out to the dealership about getting the car. For the first year, all the orders or allocations for the car, GM said were sold. Not to mention that in this market, and I tell everybody, I completely understand the whole markup game. I don't even cry about it because it's part of life and reality. That's where a lot of you don't like my comments, because you feel like you should never pay over MSRP. And my answer to you all has always been, you pay it in every other aspect of life. Why not pay it in car sales? But you don't want to support the people that sell you cars and allow them to make a living for their family. We all have different views on it, because I know how many people struggle selling cars, and selling cars isn't really as easy or simple as people believe it is, just because the times have changed now. There are a lot of people that push back on this over MSRP phase. So people go around you with different aspects by saying the car is being sold at MSRP and charge you all these hidden and fake fees that don't exist. But this is not the video for that. But that's information I have shared with you guys. And people got mad at me at that for saying that that is over MSRP payment, because they're like, it's not. It's a fee I can't avoid. That is 100% BS, because you can avoid that fee. You're just choosing not to, because to help you sleep at night, you want to hear, I bought my car at MSRP. So you bought your car at MSRP. Not going to address that anymore. Getting back to the Corvette C8 Z06, because that's why we're here. From the moment this car was released, and I came out and started getting the information on it, and I'm talking back in November of 2021, right? When it was revealed, I'm sorry, from the moment this car was revealed, I told people I had started reaching out to dealers only because I was getting upset and tired of people telling me that I was dumb for paying over MSRP, that I've been on a list since 2020 for a Z06. I'm getting one of the first allocations, and my dealer's charging MSRP, this, and the other. And the one thing I kept telling people was, money talks. Not only does money talk, I talk. So I hop on the phone, I start calling dealerships. And in the midst of me calling dealerships, what I started to learn is every dealer, because people are so willing to give up information because you think you know something that you don't. So a lot of the people were blasting, or I'm not gonna say blasting, a lot of people were flaunting their dealer on social media in replies to me and so forth. So I picked up the phone and called the dealership. Hey, how are you handling the C8 Z06? We are doing MSRP payments. Right now we have a list of about 400 people, 300 people, 200 people, 90 people. And a lot of these dealerships that were saying this, I just laughed because I know from working in the car sales business, and this is why I brought Rick Conti in this, and he even came out and sat there and said in one of his recent videos about how many C8 Z06s are stock orders. We're going to go back to that. That being in the Chevy game, you can see at another dealership their stock orders. That's how we do dealer trades. Now, there are dealer trades happening on Corvettes, but I want you to understand at the same point in time, dealerships can always see other dealerships' inventory. Stock inventory, that is. And they can see sold orders, I would say at least a month after the car is sold. Some of this information is not quite precise anymore because I start dumping it. I don't need it. But with that being said, historically, the Corvette is a historically sold car, meaning that most allocations come based off previous car sales of Corvettes. And when I'm seeing dealers saying they have 500 people on their list, 900 people on their list, 200 people on their list, and you haven't sold 200 Corvettes in 10 years, how do you expect to fill all these orders on your list? Now, I'm not going to tell you they won't, because there was a way that I knew of that would get it done, and that information I released to you before, so I'm not going to go with that in depth with it, but here's a link to that video over here. Now, with that being said, I called these dealers that people kept saying, hey, my dealer's selling MSRP, and I've been on the list since 2020, and I'm going to be one of the first allocations. I called the dealership. I talked to the dealers. But what I did that was different than you guys is I didn't talk to a salesman. I called and asked to speak to a general manager. General manager answered the phone, or he wasn't there, and I was given his information later to contact, yada yada, for whatever reason. But that's what I did. When I spoke to the general manager of the store, and sometimes I even got owners to call me back, which is kind of crazy because I never asked for an owner. Just to give you some insight. But I spoke to the general manager of the store. I told the general manager, hey, I'm looking to acquire a C8 Z06. I heard you guys were selling cars at MSRP. I'm not even trying to upset anybody, but I'm willing to pay X amount of dollars over, which at that point in time I was throwing around 15 grand. And I wanted to know if I was willing to pay an extra $15,000 over MSRP, is it possible that I can get one of your first 10 allocations? I'm not even asking for number one. I just want to know if you can help me get my hands on a C8 Z06. That would be greatly appreciated. Now, I called, so you understand, 45 dealerships with that same line. And out the 45 dealers I called, 32 actually told me if I was willing to do that, they can work something out. Some people told me I would get one of their first 5 allocations. Some people told me that I would be able to get their number 1 allocation. You know how I could get their number 1 allocation? Or their number 2 allocation? Or their number 3 allocation? Because these were the numbers that was thrown around to me. Was because I was being told up front that their list isn't going to start until car number 6 or car number 10 or car number 20 or car number 16, and you're hearing it correctly. And I even said this information in another video, is that a lot of dealers said their first 15 allocations was going to the store. The number 1 allocation was going to the store. Their first 5 allocations was going to the store. Their first 10 allocations are going to the store. So while people thinking they're number 1 on a dealer list to get a car, you are number 1 in the line, but you were not number 1 for their allocation. And like I explained to people so many times in so many videos, is you can complain about it, but the truth of the matter is the allocation belongs to the dealership, not you. They can choose to do whatever they want with the allocation. You can't stop them. And people were getting mad at me and telling me I was trying to cause turmoil and so forth and yada yada. And I wasn't. I was just being honest with you, and I was telling you that all the information I was doing behind the scenes, this is the answers I was getting back. And I also know from being in car sales that the allocations belong to the dealership. And you have a lot of arrogant owners that will flex their power to show you that. That's what people don't understand. You're looking at the name on the wall that says Chevrolet, and you think because it says Chevrolet, Chevrolet has some control over it. And these are all independent dealers. And with the independent dealers come independent ownership and personalities of these owners and how they want to do business or how they want to conduct business. And that's all I was trying to explain to people. So now we're going to fast forward to today and keep this more current. Rick Conti releases a video sitting there saying how many dealers actually have stock orders. Now, I'm actually surprised. Well, no, I'm not, because although me and Rick have had our disagreements on certain things, when I met him in person, I felt like there was a pure genuineness about him, and I don't even think he knew who I was, because yes, we spoke and our conversation wasn't the best. But like I said, everybody has their moments. Everybody doesn't have a good day. And I never held that against him, because he provides so much Corvette content. He goes out his way to help people. So just because we have a disagreement on perception of how things are going to play out doesn't really mean he's a bad person. And what do I mean by that? Hey, I can't let the cat out the bag, I guess. I was one of those people that told Rick Conti his dealership was going to sell over MSRP for the C8 Z06 while he kept preaching they weren't. And I never came out and publicly said it. That was just something I shared with him. And he told me, no, I didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, Rick, you're not the only person at your dealership that sells Corvettes. Now, when somebody tells you that, that means somebody else is doing something behind closed doors that you're unaware of. Whether or not you want to take that information and try to research, poke around, get more up-to-date information, or whatever you want to call it. But I told you. So with that being said, he wasn't the only dealership. I actually broke that news to salesmen that were saying their dealers will never sell over MSRP, who later on came out and said their dealership is going to sell over MSRP. I was telling people the same information when I was dropping Corvette videos that, hey man, a lot of these dealers you think not going to sell over MSRP are going to end up selling over MSRP. And I see that because the phone calls I'm making I see the greed starting to kick in. And what I mean by the greed card starting to kick in is, even if they sell you a car at MSRP, you're going to get jumped in line without even knowing you're getting jumped by somebody that's willing to pay over MSRP. And Rick Conti actually came out and gave out some information back in March that I was telling people before March was the scapegoat that GM was going to give dealers to do it. What do I mean? Like I tell everybody, GM is a business. A lot of cars they put out, they're going to put out in the highest quality build they can make at that point in time. So you're going to see a lot of 70th anniversary Z06s get built, which we have seen a lot of 70th anniversary Z06s get built. You're going to see a lot of Z07 cars get built, which we have also gotten that information from Rick Conti, that in this production cycle, or these first allocations, although the Z07 is on constraint, the most cars built out of the cars ordered are Z07. So when your dealer gets told that the only car they can order, which Rick Conti and several other dealers start talking about, but it's funny that you mention it, and I had already stated it beforehand, but you mentioned it, that GM may come out and only allow people to buy, or dealers to order 3LT or 3LZ cars or Z07 package cars. And there's a lot of people in line to purchase a car that didn't want to take that type of steep step up. So what do you do? And that is what I have been saying for Jump Street, even if it's not a true statement. If dealerships have people willing to spend over MSRP and bringing that to them, that was the answer you were going to hear. Like, hey, unfortunately, we know you're number 2 in line this month, but unless you want to step up to a 3LZ, which I know your boys a 2LZ or a 1LZ, and you've been on the list since 2020, but we had a constraint stating that we had to use a certain amount of our allocations for a 3LZ car. So we're going to get somebody else behind you that was willing to get a 3LZ and give them the allocation because we don't want to lose it. That was going to be the information you started to hear, and I told people that. So now all of a sudden, when Rick Conti says it, people want to listen, like, oh my God, this is some new information, never heard this before. I get it, bigger channel, more credible source because you don't know my history. But that wasn't even a hard guess, because like a lot of dealers are now coming out and telling you guys, or a lot of people are starting to tell you guys, and they're telling you the same thing I've been telling you before, that this isn't the first Corvette that came out. This isn't the first car to sell over MSRP. Those are not new practices. This isn't the first time we've seen flippers. Those are not new practices. So the only difference about this is it's lasting a lot longer than the first 6 to 10 months in a year, which is usually when you saw all this activity on a new released vehicle. So for the C7, you saw this type of activity the first 6 to 10 months when the C7 first came out. You didn't really see it year 2 and on. So people don't even know this type of activity exists. This is what you typically see, but because you aren't in those markets, or you're not a first year buyer, you usually didn't see this type of activity. So for a lot of people, what we're experiencing now was new. And it wasn't new, it just never lasted this long. What actually happened was I made a shorter video coming out telling people you're going to be surprised at how many unsold orders are available for sale across the country out of that first 300 and some odd cars that everybody kept saying, oh, they were celebrities and yada yada yada. I had several conversations with people with Corvettes and Carlisles, but I actually told them that a lot of the Corvettes that are going to be built aren't going to be sold orders. They was like, why would dealers do stuff like that? I don't see that happening. And I was like, I went back to my comment before. These allocations belong to the dealership. So regardless if you think somebody will do it, this is how it's going to play out. A lot of these orders are not going to be sold orders for cars that's built. More dealerships, especially after GM announced they were going to void the warranty on the car if you sell it within a year, that many dealers who had anticipation of flipping cars, even if they were doing it through another source, which I tell people all the time, there are dealers that work with Corvette only stores on the used market, and they allow these Corvette only stores access to sell cars especially since the pandemic hit, to kind of keep their hands clean or their image clean, they allow these dealers to sell cars over MSRP and they split the proceeds. Or, for you that don't understand, this is called selling cars on consignment. So what they actually do is the dealer will take the car in. They will mark it as a sold order in the system, give it to a Corvette only store to sell, and the Corvette only store will then go out and put a 20-30 grand markup on it, and the dealership will agree to whatever the Corvette only store sells it for. We will split 60-40, 70-30, 75-25, 80-20. And although you may sit back and say, why would the Corvette store agree to such an arrangement? Because you have to understand, the Corvette store would never have his hands on such a caliber car to sell, and it's not a hard sell. So even if I take it in, it's free inventory, and I'm just making money for moving the car. So it's almost like when you hear people say, hey, you can sell stuff on Amazon and make money without really having the product. And that's what's happening. The Corvette store is making money selling the product without taking any other liability for owning the product. The main reason why I brought this out was because when I was at Corvettes in Carlisle and I was talking to people, I met so many people at Corvettes in Carlisle. I actually enjoyed it, and I really want to do it again next year. I told a couple people when we were talking C8 Z06, and I was around the C8 Z06 tent, that we haven't seen the last of the crazy markups, and when this car comes out, the orders and yada yada yada, that a lot of these dealers' first orders aren't going to be customer orders. You're actually going to see a lot of dealers with stock inventory, which is something you haven't seen in quite some time. And not only are you going to see them with stock inventory, a lot of lists may fall apart because the stock inventory that these dealers are going to sell out of is going to be more profitable. What you can expect to see, and I think the Corvette market is going to change, is more dealers are going to order cars for stock. And then once they start to struggle to sell their stock inventory, they will then resort back to the list to a guaranteed sale. And I was getting pushback because people was like, that would never happen. I said, you're going to see it happen. And I'm going to be the first person to honestly tell you this, because there's a lot of greed out there. And when I was making my videos called Chasing the C8 Z06, I was legitimately trying to find an end to acquire a Z06, which I found several. That's the thing people understand. I literally found several ends to getting the C8 Z06 before the crazy markups started to shape. So all these people that were sitting there saying that my dealer's selling at MSRP, it's a lot of dealers that have two lists, or that sit there and say, and this was my favorite one. My favorite one was the first 15 allocations belong to the owner and his friends. My second favorite one is, what we've agreed to do is, for every 3 cars we sell on a list, the 4th car is going to be a dealer stock. So we will have available Corvettes to sell in our inventory, because we're going to sell every 4th allocation out the store, or out our allocation. Every 4th allocation will be an allocation that we are going to order as a dealership to sell from stock inventory. So if you're interested in getting one of those cars, which is now creating a separate list, just so you understand this, we're looking for about 35 grand over. That's what we're thinking the market value is going to be. So you now have two lists. You have a 35K markup list, and you have your MSRP list. Which, if you ask me, and this is just me being me, how many people actually think the 35K markup list was going to take second priority? I'll let you ponder that for a second. So now Rick Conti has come out and actually given the information of how many dealers across the country have stock inventory. And that information has been 120 overall C8 Z06s have been ordered for dealer stock. Now, I've been telling people this for quite some time. And like I said that, and I kind of mentioned that same thing at Corvettes and Carlisle. So if you're watching, give me my roses. Say, man, you were right. I didn't think it was going to happen. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with sitting back and telling somebody that they were not wrong. Even if you don't agree with the information they gave you, they told you the truth. If you understand what's taking place and how the game is being played, I've seen this game for a large part of my life. And that's why I say this is nothing new, and we're seeing what we are seeing. Now, I'm sorry for dragging this video on for so long. It was a lot of stuff on my mind I want to get out. You may not see it all. I'll probably try to go back around and hit some of the key points to shorten it up some. But that's why I said this video is going to kind of replace the other video, because some items I discussed in here were mentioned in the other video. The overall focus of this video and the summary I want to leave you guys with is that it's not hard to get your hands on a Corvette C8 Z06. The inventory, the availability will be there. You don't have to be on a list. I've expressed that so many times before, and so many people told me if you weren't on a list, you'll never get a car. As you see right now, under the false impression, and people hear information and run with it, and that's the thing I want you to do. It's not always hear information and run with it. Sometimes the one person that's telling you something different actually knows what they're talking about. Everybody was telling me that the first 300 allocations were going to celebrities and influencers and all these people that they thought had priority over them in buying a car from General Motors, or that General Motors was giving these cars to people that they felt need to have the car. And I told people that's not necessarily true. What you're seeing is these cars are going to dealerships that have relationships with GM and have a reason to have their hands on a car. But a lot of these cars aren't going to be sold units. And I was told I was wrong, I was crazy, I don't have no information, I don't know nothing, I just like causing chaos and turmoil. That's what I was told. And I'm just sitting there saying, look, man, the history of me buying cars and the history of me working the car market, this is what I see. GM is not going to just ignore their #1 Corvette store. GM is not going to ignore the biggest supporter of the Corvette, or the owner that's been buying their #1 VIN number forever. GM is not going to ignore the relationship with this dealership and that dealership. So no matter how you think it's playing out, these dealers are going to get cars, and every dealership that's getting a car doesn't have a sold order. One of the major dealers on this list, and I'll just tell you like this, they're in California. One of the major dealers on that list that got an allocation came out and said, we're not even taking the list, we're just going to sell every car for market value that we get, every allocation that we get. And they got cars. The last thing I'm going to sit there and say before I get up out of here, and I really apologize because I don't quite remember the guy's name. I want to say it's Andre or Andrew or something like that. Now, I apologize if I messed up your name, and I know we met at Carlisle, and you definitely said you were following my channel. although you did mistake me for Ask Griff, but that's okay. And I gotta link up with Ask Griff because a lot of people have mistaken me for Ask Griff, and I don't even know how or why, but it's whatever. But we did meet at Corvettes in Carlisle, and we were talking about, am I going to get a C8 Z06? And in the midst of that conversation, we got on to allocations. And the one thing I told him was, him and his girlfriend, I'm not even sure if that was his wife or his fiance, but he was with his significant other. And one thing I told this guy, and it's kind of funny to this day, is I told him out of the first allocations to hit, I don't know how I'm going to back this information up, but out of the first allocations to get assigned to the C8 Z06, I can guarantee you that at least a third will not be sold orders. And for Rick Conti to come out and drop the information that he just dropped, I legitimately called it. And I think that is so funny because I never expected to be that right when it came to C8 Z06 orders. That a third of the orders, truthfully, are not sold orders. So, going back to my video where I said getting a C8 Z06 is not going to be as hard as people think. The only challenge is just going to be how much you are willing to pay. For everybody that's on these lists and thought that they was on the list and the cars wouldn't be available, out the first ordering cycle, and I've heard so many people say, I'm sitting on a list, I'm number 1, I'm number 200, and so forth. And here's the even more funnier part. You have people sitting on a list with allocations for 50K over, and they're dealers with cars in their inventory right now, that's willing to sell you a car for 50K over. So do you continue to wait on your list, or do you go out to see if any of these dealers with inventory right now have a vehicle that's similar to a build that you wanted or spec that you wanted to create, and go ahead and pay the 50K over? Choices. Now people are starting to watch, and I have a lot of Corvette salesmen following my channel, which I'm not even sure how that works because you guys have the content I need. So maybe I can reach out to somebody out here who's in my local area, who works in a dealership that follows my channel. Maybe you can reach out to me and we can work something out where I can come out and see some of these cars when they come in, and I can put them on the channel and so forth. Maybe we can work that out. But I'm saying this to you guys, and I want people to understand this, is because I actually get reached out to by several salesmen who have cars in stock. They're not locally, but they had a car in stock, and they're sitting there saying, hey man, I saw you said you was looking to acquire a C8 Z06, and my dealer just happened to have one, or we have one being built next week, or we got this and so forth. Would you be interested? That's the comments I get. And I'm just telling you guys, and I know I'm gonna get the same request I got before, when people finally give up and realize the dream they're chasing isn't going to work out like they planned. And that is, can you tell me what dealer wanted to sell a car for this amount of money? Can you tell me what dealer said they would take your $15,000 behind closed doors and sell a car? Can you tell me what dealer has this? And truthfully, man, I hate to say it, Instagram has kind of taken over the social media market, but you got to go to Facebook. A lot of these dealers that's asking this money or have cars are advertising them on Facebook. And it's an easier conversation because you can just respond back in a DM or to an advertisement and say, this is what I'm looking to do. I get those messages all the time, and that's kind of what, like I pop up, I'm on these social media avenues, and I get messages on those social media avenues asking me, do I want to buy a car? I threw a lot of information at you, but I want you to understand the history because, like I said, I have a lot of followers that now is starting to subscribe to my channel. So this is where my information is coming from. I will say this before I let you guys go. My major GM connection is thinking about retiring. We actually sat down a few times and had lunch or dinner or just met to have a conversation. And I'm hating to see him go. And I get it, you've been in the industry well over 60 years, and sometimes it is just time for a change. So as he's looking to transition into the next chapter of his life, we still conversate. I don't try to bother him as much because part of the reason that's pushing this is some health issues he's going through. And I want to be genuine and not just bother him while he's going through things. I don't want to bother him while he's going through things trying to get Corvette content. That's not who I am. And on the last note, I want to sit there and say, watching Rick Conti's video and him saying he's going through some health issues himself, or he's been sick for a while, all I can sit there and say to you is that that's the real side of life that a lot of us don't talk about. Well, him even looking for the psychiatrist to have on the channel, and then him mentioning mental health issues. And I know it doesn't mean that he's going through them, but I did drop a video earlier this year because I had people that I associate with that were close to me that I saw the signs. And these things are real. So I can't harp enough on pay attention to your loved ones, pay attention to your friends, look out, be there for people, because a lot of people need assistance or recognition, or as I was told, we all have different trigger points in our life, and we all can use extra little support. But that's a whole nother topic. Again, go out, do your research, get your hands on a C8 Z06, especially if you're willing to pay $50K to $100. Jump off these lists and go get you a car, man. That's my 2 cents. So, ICNV Driver Edition, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNV Driver Edition community, share the video. I'm sure with all the information we covered, there's some stuff in here somebody may want to hear. But I appreciate you for hanging out there this long with me and going down this rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, like I always tell you guys, I got more content coming your way. I'm going to shorten it down. As always, stay safe, stay blessed, and I will see you in these streets. Peace.